What if you could lead more effectively and go home on time? Welcome to the Lightbulb. I'm Zoe Thompson, leadership and performance coach, and each week I bring you 3 practical insights from my work helping impact-driven leaders transform from reactive to intentional leadership so they can finish work on time and take guilt-free time off, creating success that feels as good as it looks. Let's jump in. I'm back. I've come back. I didn't want to come back, but I have come back. It's been a good few days away. Very much needed time off and to be able to log off. And I had considered recording this podcast while I was away, but made the decision to do it when I came back. So here we are. And it's episode 32. I want to focus the 3 light bulbs this week. 2 will be from the conference because that's the work that's been happening. And then finally, I just want to talk through some of the things that I did that helped me to be able to step away from everything for a few days. And whilst they're unique to me and appreciate that a lot of you will be in very different circumstances, I'm hoping that the principles will be of use to you, especially for those of you who've got holidays coming up, because these things don't just happen. We have to put the habits, the behaviors, the practices in place a long time before we plan to step away from our work. And some of you will already have those habits in place, and some of you are starting to put those habits in place. But I'm going to share what I've done because I don't have a team or VA at the moment. So for me, that stepping away looks slightly different to what I've done in the past. So I'm going to share that as my 3rd light bulb for today's episode. I do want to share my first 2 from the conference out in Morocco. For those of you who aren't aware, and just to give some background and some context, I have been delivering a 2-year leadership program for an organization called BKR, and I've been delivering their leadership development program over the last 2 years for the EMEA region. And every year they have a conference. Last year we were in Dublin, and the year before was in Milan, and this year was in Marrakesh. So we all met up for the conference, and it was the last in-person workshop of us working together. And then we joined the main conference, and they all graduated and had their certificates given out on stage, which was very cool. It was a really interesting workshop. I wanted to try something I hadn't tried before. It was really interesting how they approached it. Now, I don't want to give too much away because it's an exercise that I will definitely run again. I wanted to give them an exercise that helped them to recognize how far they've come over the last 2 years. Now, the first light bulb is something that somebody said during the discussion. And I was moving around the room, so I kind of had one ear on what different groups were talking about and kind of just hovering around groups to see how the discussions were going, lend a hand if it was needed. And one of the participants came out with this phrase, this question, and it completely grabbed my attention. I was like, oh, that is a great question. And I thought, okay, that's definitely my light bulb. So the question that he asked was, do we know or are we assuming? Because if we're assuming, we don't know. I'm going to say that again. Do we know or are we assuming? Because if we're assuming, we don't know. And that for me was such a great question. I turned around and you could see people around the table just stopped. And it forced them to ask themselves that question. Do they know or are they assuming? And it's something that happens in leadership a lot. We make these assumptions, and in leadership, it can be a real issue. It can lead to real issues when we don't ask enough questions and when we make assumptions. And this, for me, is an indicator of reactive leadership. It's not pausing for thought before asking more questions. It's jumping in for quick answers, quick solutions, rather than the pause, asking a question, asking more questions if they're needed, and then assessing and making decisions, making sure that you know and that you are not assuming. And it was interesting to see how that really started to shift that conversation around the table, and how they then started to look at what they did know, what they were unclear on, and where they needed to ascertain and gather more information to bridge that knowledge gap, so that they did know, that they weren't assuming, and they could then assess that information to be able to make a decision. It was such a great pattern interrupt. It wasn't a process, it wasn't a framework, it wasn't a model. It was just a great question. And I think the light bulb for me in that moment was how useful that question might be in a meeting, or when you're making a decision, or even if you are in an email exchange or conversation. That's such a powerful question to interrupt that pattern of thought and create that pause. And we know there's power in the pause. I've talked about it probably in half the episodes because it's so important. Just such a great question. And for me, an example of how far this individual and others on the group too have come during the program, that they are asking better questions. They are pausing to ask better questions. And not only are they pausing themselves, they were pausing others to stop, to think, and to ask better questions, to gather that information so that they had what they needed to make the decision they needed to make. And that for me was such a great demonstration of a fantastic leadership skill. So feel free to take that question away. Do we know, or are we assuming? Because if we're assuming, we don't know. Brilliant. So light bulb 2, I asked them the question, who has influenced your journey? And this was part of the reflection questions of what they've taken away, what their biggest wins have been. I really wanted to know who has influenced the journey. And we captured the answers on post-it notes, put them up on flip charts so that people could see. And it was really nice for those that felt comfortable to stand up and share what others had influenced. And for me, the takeaway was that it wasn't a knowledge share. It wasn't that they were sharing a model or a framework. It wasn't a practical thing that people had done. It was how they had influenced them in how they were showing up. That they were seeing somebody do something and it was giving them permission to try it themselves. And this is, for me, why I love running group programs. I mean, I love one-to-one. I love the intensity of one-to-one. I love how quickly we can get to the root cause in one-to-one sessions. I love the group dynamic. I love that in the room, there is so much information and so much learning to get out of everybody else. And that often that has a real positive influence for people. And so one of the post-its said that they had seen somebody else in the group have that courage to ask lots of questions, and said, I found myself wanting to be more like her, more bold, more confident to ask questions, and that they hadn't done that before. And then somebody else had said that they loved that somebody else on the program had shown them a different way of thinking, that they were in the room with somebody who had a very different leadership style to them, very different approaches, very different way of doing things. But it gave them that opportunity to have these conversations, to have these discussions and learn different perspectives and different approaches. And whilst not all of them are perhaps ones they would adopt, it was good for them to challenge their own thinking of how things have always been done. And again, this is something that is common for leaders who've worked in the same industry. And I'd found the same in the police. When you work in the same environment, leaders, people tend to have that group think. They tend to approach things in the same way because they've learned from other people. So being in a room where you've got people from, in this scenario, different countries, different companies, you're going to have people who do things differently. And it was great to see that actually having those conversations with people who do have a different approach, who do see things very differently, helped them to be a more critical thinker about how they were dealing with things, and also to challenge their own perspective. And somebody else's name who came up was their willingness to take initiative and share their stories, share their ideas, and lead conversations in the room. And then watching other people step forward because they were giving permission to do the same. This was something else that I really loved about this group. Some of the people at the conference were asking me about the group dynamic, and they were saying are some people more quiet and some people more confident, because there was a difference between the leadership experience of people in the room. Some were more senior, some had made partner in the first couple of months, and some people were more new to leadership. And what I shared with them was that actually what I noticed was that those who were more confident and those that had more experience were very good at sharing their own experiences, but then inviting other people to share theirs. And again, that's the group dynamic of recognizing that whilst you might have something to share because you have had that experience, that recognizing that actually somebody who's been in leadership a less amount of time will still have something to share, because leadership is so varied and it is so different that we don't want to make assumptions. Okay, it goes back to Lightbulb 1. We don't want to make the assumptions that somebody who has been leading for a smaller amount of time won't have same experiences to share. And recognizing that, some people with less confidence might wait until they are invited to share. And it was great to be able to see people do that in the group. You don't develop as a leader in isolation. You develop it by observing. You develop your own skills by mirroring, modeling, observing, and looking at what other people do really well and adapting that to make it work for you. Sometimes we are inspired by other people. Sometimes we aspire to be like other people. And sometimes, as was my first experience, we learn how not to do it through other people as well. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. It just means it's not a good fit for us. It doesn't align with how we want to lead. And we only learn that from experiencing and learning from other people. And that's exactly why I created the leadership community, because I wanted to give people that space. Now, this is a great environment because an organization has invested in their future leaders. So they have this opportunity to be in that space, to have these conversations, to learn from other people. Not everybody is in an organization where that is an opportunity. And some people actually want to be in a room with people who are in a different industry, who are leading at a different level, who are perhaps from a different country or have different experiences of ways of doing things. And so that's really where part of the idea of the community came up, because I'm seeing it work really well in organizations. And I recognize that there is a gap for the people that I'm working with for them to have that space when their organizations aren't investing in that. So if you want to find out more about that, just pop me a message and let me know. Or if you head to the website, it's there under individuals. You can find out more about the community. If that is something that you feel is missing for you, being in that space, being in that room, where you can have those conversations, you can bounce things around, you can learn from other people, let me know. Okay, third light bulb. So much of what I talk about is being able to increase your efficiency and effectiveness as a leader so that you create that confident, self-sufficient team, but also so that you can go home on time and take the big week off. And that, for me, was really important for me to walk the talk last week. So yes, I went away for work, and up until the Monday was very much in work mode, because we had the workshop, then we had networking opportunities. And then on the Monday, we had the second day of the conference, where I was able to sit in the room, hear some of the speakers, get involved in those conversations. So I was very much in work mode up until that Monday afternoon, when I then travelled across to the coast for a few days off. And that was when it was like, okay, the laptop is not going to open. I'm going to delete apps off my phone so that I can go and take some time out. And that for me was a very conscious decision. Now, as I said at the beginning, I don't have a team of support. So for me, being able to switch off 100% didn't feel like it was possible, but I was open to testing it, because there wasn't going to be somebody else checking emails, and there wasn't going to be somebody else who was able to reply on my behalf. So I made an agreement with myself. Myself, and I had a little conference conversation, and I made the decision to make very clear boundary lines as to what good would look like. And I was thinking ahead to the end of the week, thinking, okay, when I'm traveling back to the airport on Saturday, ready to head home, how will I know I've made the most of the break without feeling like the wheels haven't fallen off? I made the decision that I would check emails in the morning. There wasn't any coffee in the room, which for those of you who know me well, you'll know that coffee is very important. However, it was coffee and breakfast up on the rooftop terrace. So they kind of clawed some points back with that a little bit. I knew that I had this window in the morning before I could go up and get coffee. I was going to be awake anyway, because I always wake up early, even when I'm on holiday. And so I knew there was going to be a window where I could check my emails without it interrupting my day. So I made the decision that at minimum, I would check my emails on the Monday, which wasn't an issue because I was in work mode anyway. I would check them on the Wednesday morning and send out the newsletter. And I would check on the Friday morning to send out the newsletter. And on Tuesday and Thursday, if I felt like it, I would. If I didn't, I wouldn't feel guilty about it. I had an out of office message on. All of my clients knew that I was going to be away. That was all lined up before I went. That's what I decided good would look like. I would check on the Wednesday and on the Friday, send the email, and then log back off again. And if there was anything that looked critical, I would have the opportunity to deal with it while I was logged on, or pop them a message to say, I'm out, but I will prioritize this when I'm back. Now, as I suspected, nothing urgent came in, nothing that couldn't wait until I was back in the office, and the wheels did not fall off. But I did need that little bit of a security blanket to know that I had that option there, and to do it in a way that didn't impact me switching off, but also gave me that reassurance that there wasn't something that was business critical sitting in my email list. Other than that, I deleted all of the apps off of my phone so that when I was out and about, it wasn't popping up with anything. And then it meant I physically had to log onto the laptop to check. So I was doing that as I had agreed with myself before I went. And I needed that time off. I needed that switch off for those 5 days, just to really give myself some time out and to chill and to read and just relax. And as I suspected would happen, by Friday, having had a couple of days just with a clear headspace, the creative ideas started to pop up. So if you're on the email list, you will have seen what that is. And I've got a free challenge coming in a couple of weeks' time, and it is going to help you to be more efficient, more effective with your time. It's going to help you to create a space in your calendar for whatever you want to create that space for. And I'm going to help you to implement the AAA time framework, which is what I talk about a lot. If you're on the mailing list, it was covered in the email this morning, but I am very excited. I've not done a challenge or anything for a little while, so I'm looking forward to being able to help you to implement one of the most common models and frameworks that I use with my clients. And it's all completely free. It's going to be an email every morning with a little action for you to do. That small investment of your time and energy will have a huge return in how you show up for your leadership. If you want to join it, There is a sign-up form. I just need your name and an email. And that is it. I will send more information over for those of you that want to get involved. So I knew that would happen. I knew that the minute I gave myself time to think that those ideas would come up. So now I've got to put it into action. But we'll be back again for the next episode. Still planning to record one at the end of the week. I have 3 workshops this week. 5 clients and a couple of meetings with some companies that are planning to work with me. I have a busy week ahead. So I'm looking forward to seeing what comes up in those sessions to share with you in the next episode. I am going to call it to an end here. I hope these 3 light bulbs has been of value to you. Let me know what you put into action as a result, and I will be back again with the next episode very soon. And those are your 3 takeaways for this week. Before you go, ask yourself, what's my light bulb moment from this? And now that I know what I know, what will I do differently? Choose one action, however small, and commit to it. That's how overwhelmed and reactive becomes aligned and intentional. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next week on the next episode of The Light Bulb.